joining us right now to talk about what in the world is happening in this game of chicken between Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Florham Park, New Jersey. It's where the Jets are. Joining us here, covers the Packers expertly for the worldwide leader in sports, Rob Demovsky. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Rob?
I'm great, Rich. You'll have to ask Coach Izzo what he thinks of this, because you know he's a Packers fan, right? He grew up about 90 miles north of Green Bay, technically in the state of Michigan. But I'd be curious to hear what Tom has to say about all this.
Oh, Rob, I hear all those growing up in Iron Mountain, Michigan, loving the Packers stories from Mariucci, his best man at his wedding, and vice versa, Rob. I have had firsthand stories about, watching their practices through chain link fences and stuff like that. I know that.
Izzo, every preseason, it seems like Izzo finds his way to the sidelines for a preseason game before basketball season starts, and I love to talk to him about.
He's good people.
About growing up there and him and Mooch. But anyway, I digress.
At any rate, because I choose my words carefully, I intend to get answers from you.
That's what you said when you texted me.
Okay. I intend to get answers from you. What is happening?
You want answers?
Yeah.
You want the truth?
I do. I can try and I can handle it. It sounds like there's just a game of chicken. I don't know when it's going to end. Yeah. What do you got for me?
Here's what I can tell you, Rich, right now. Okay. From what I was told, the Packers think the Jets are kind of lowballing them a little bit. Now, what that means, I don't exactly know. But the Packers feel like they're in a position of leverage right now. And Rich Cimini, our great Jets reporter, had a great line in a story that we worked on. Leverage is in the eye of the beholder, which I think in this case is probably true. But I think right now, at least up until, I'd say around what is the first round of the draft, April 27th or so, I think the Packers have leverage. So, no, after that, they sort of lose any immediate impact help that they could get from a trade. But I just don't think they're in a hurry to just take whatever the Jets are offering. And we know that the Jets don't want to give up that pick number 13. So they're going to have to figure this out somehow, some way to get equal value for whatever a first-round pick would be, whether it's, using the draft chart to add up a second, a third, a fourth, or whatever it is to equal that 13th pick, or a player. This was suggested to me. The Jets had 3 first-round picks last year. One of them, the third of the 3, was a defensive tackle, Jermaine Johnson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And now I'm having a brain lock. But let's just say the Packers really liked him last year and had a first-round grade on him last year. Would they accept that as him as the equivalent of the first-round pick?
Rob, seriously. Why would the Jets give up anything for Rodgers that is a first-round talent when he's 39 and he's going in a darkness cave and he's flipping off the lights wondering if he's going to play anymore? Why would the Jets – honestly, it's just – and I understand Gutekunst has due diligence that he has to do, and I understand Mark Murphy has to do whatever due diligence, but clearly they don't want him back there. Everyone knows –
correct.
You can't just go back to your corners with the Jets are like, we have Zach Wilson and you have Aaron Rodgers, and boy, that was – let's split the tab of Lucky's dinner in Malibu. Like, get out of here,
Here's the thing. Why would they do it? Because the Jets ownership is desperate for relevancy, and they know that Rodgers is their only ticket to relevancy right now. Okay, so that's why they're probably going to be forced to pay a little bit more than they should. Now, from the Packers standpoint, you're right. You as Mark Murphy said 15 years ago, when they turned from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, we have crossed the Rubicon, if you remember that statement. Or Mike McCarthy said that train has left the station. Yeah. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers isn't coming back. And to suggest, I know that was suggested somewhere earlier this season that they would take him, that the only way they would take him back would be as a backup, and they're not going to pay him $60 million to be a backup, obviously. So they have moved on, which is why at some point they lose leverage in this. I don't think they're at that point now, but at some point the Packers do lose that leverage, because ultimately that $60 million check is still sitting out there that they would have to write.
So let me ask you this, Rob Demovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show from ESPN, NFL Nation. So I guess I'm surprised by this, which is when the Packers gave the Jets permission to fly out and chat with Rodgers, or just to talk to Rodgers, that led to a plane flight to go see him. There was no framework for a deal. There was that everybody's just suddenly like so shocked the Jets were interested in Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers was interested in playing for the Jets. I mean, get out of here with that too. So
right, that's the part that's hard to figure. You would think that before you go down that road, or in this case, go down that runway and take off to go visit with them, that would be something that would be worked out. I have heard conflicting things on that, but I would say this: the fact that there hasn't been a deal done yet tells me that they probably didn't have that worked out. But sure, I was told by several people that this is all, it's a formality. They just got to sign off on it. But it would appear in this moment, that's not the case, because it hasn't happened yet. Now, look, it's going to happen, right? Like, everybody in the situation knows that at some point, Brian Gutekunst is going to put his signature on those trade papers and send it to the league office, and they're going to get this deal done. But the fact that it hasn't happened yet makes me, I think tells us that they just haven't quite agreed on that. Now, it's also possible, Rich, that they could have the trade compensation part of it worked out in terms of draft picks and who's going where, and they're haggling over the financials of it right now, because there's so many. This isn't just, we trade you to the Jets, you send us picks A, B, C, and D, and player A, and we're done. The Jets are going to want Rodgers to rework the contract, which Rodgers has said that he knows it would have to be adjusted. Okay, he remember he said adjusted on the Pat McAfee show.
Yes.
And if we've learned anything with Aaron, we know that you better figure out what that word means, because adjusted doesn't necessarily mean pay cut, just as immunized doesn't necessarily mean vaccinated. But I don't want to go down that road. So there's all that has to be worked out. So it's not just as simple as Joe Douglas and Brian Gutekunst, sitting down and saying, okay, this is it. You sign the paper, I'll sign the paper, we send it to New York. There's more to it than that.
Rob Demovsky of ESPN covers the Packers right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So before we return to this subject, let's just put a pin in that for the moment. Let's talk about Jordan Love. He's ready. They believe he's ready. That they have, or the circumstances of their relationship with Rodgers in the last year changed to the point where they're ready to test their confidence in Jordan Love in Green Bay. What do you make of that, Rob?
Of those three things, he's ready, they believe he's ready, or they're just ready to see if he's ready. I think the third part is where they're at. And Brian Gutekunst at the Combine said something really interesting. It was sort of a read between the lines kind of thing. But we asked him about, the contract that you did last year, 3 years, $150 million, with the setup being basically the first 2 years fully guaranteed. Why did you do that? And he said something along the lines of, we liked that when we did it, but after what happened last season, our thinking has changed a little bit. That was the phrase. Our thinking has changed a little bit. That on February 28th or whatever day, March 1st, whatever day that was the final indication that they were moving on from it. Something had changed. Now, what had changed? Well, okay, whatever you think of Aaron Rodgers, whether you think he's eccentric, whether you think he's a distraction, whatever it is that you think, and that's up to every individual to decide for themselves. But when you win 13 games 3 years in a row, it's easy as an organization, as a coaching staff that deals with them on a daily basis, to say, whatever, he might be a little this or he might be a little that, but we're winning 13 games, it's worth it. Well, the only thing that changed last year, Rich, is they went 8-9 and missed the playoffs. So maybe some of those things that might be viewed as difficult to work with, or what does the kindergarten teacher say? Struggles to get along with others in playtime. I think that was sent home on my report card once or twice. Those things are harder to take when you're 8 and 9, and I think that's sort of the way that they reached it with him. Then you add into the fact that you put 3 years in the Jordan Love. You've invested all this time. you've seen some progress. Now, I would argue that I don't know that it's enough progress to see to believe that he's going to be the guy. But at some point, you've got to find out. And I think that's all that mixed up together is why we're sitting here on March 20th, just waiting for the official end of the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay.
I got to be honest with you, Rob. If you had to point to a spot where things might have changed, I would. And again, this is totally just observing from my seat in Los Angeles. It would be when Devonte Adams left, and in the fact that Rodgers' connection to him, not just on the field, locker room, his feeling of connectivity to the locker room, his ability to have that guy on the field and not have to find out who he has. And Christian Watson, we did find that out second half of the season. Romeo Doubs, whenever he was healthy, and maybe the Packers with that change, setting the table, that it makes sense for them to have Jordan Love start to grow old with the young guys and not the old guy to try and stay young with the young guys. You know what I mean? Like that
totally.
Might be it if I had to peg it.
I still maintain that on March 15th of last year, that when Aaron Rodgers signed that contract, he thought Devonte Adams was coming back to Green Bay. I can't swear to that, but I feel fairly good about saying that Rodgers thought he was coming back with Devonte Adams, and then 2 days later, Adams was traded. Now we do know that Adams had just said things earlier than that to the Packers, that he may have wanted to go elsewhere. But I think Rodgers thought that by me coming back, I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm coming back, that Devonte will still want to come back here and they'll work something out. And I think that was a big shock to Aaron Rodgers and the whole thing. So I think pointing to that as a whether it's a turning point or a final straw, I think that is a monumental date on the timeline of the divorce between Rodgers and the Packers.
Rob Demovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show. And the game of chicken, has this affected the way Gutekunst can go shopping in the free agency period at all? Any of the other decisions that he's made? You got Bakhtiari, who's maybe is it fair to say the lone leftover of the Rodgers BFFs still in that locker room?
Pretty much.
Right now?
Yep, pretty much. I mean, Mason Crosby is kicker hasn't been re-signed yet, but Cobb isn't coming back. Mercedes Lewis isn't coming back. Robert Tunyon's in Chicago. Lazard, obviously, with the Jets. So, yeah, that's sort of the group. But, having covered the end of most of the Brett Favre tenure, but at the end, it was similar. I mean, quarterbacks keep getting older, and their teammates keep getting younger, stay the same age. And that age gap, it's different. And at some point, that's just the way it is in this league. I remember talking to Rodgers his first or second year. I think it was his first year. Just asking about his relationship with Brett, and not in a bad way, but he just said, "Look, I'm closer in age to Brett Favre's daughter than I am to Brett Favre." That's just sort of the way it goes. And if you can't deal with that as a player, I don't know what to tell you. But Rodgers' track record as general manager, when I say that, as all the guys that he said that they should have kept over the years, in most cases he was probably wrong. I mean, yeah, Charles Woodson and maybe Peppers were the exception. They let those guys go probably earlier, but there are plenty of guys that he mentioned in his, when he aired his grievances when he came back to the Packers a couple of years ago and talked about how he didn't have a say in personnel and how they treated older players. Most of those situations, he was probably wrong about wanting those guys back and how productive they could be. I will say this too, Rich. Now, I realize the rosters are different in New York and Green Bay, but Rodgers didn't feel like he had the weapons to win in Green Bay, yet he wants all these same guys with him in New York. So, make of that what you will. Well,
I mean, you're just a little pushback there. The guys that he wants in New York, Mercedes Lewis, Cobb, and Lazard, I mean, those are the guys he relied on the most. Yeah. And that it is true. I mean, look, Watson had the ability to catch touchdowns big time. First pass he threw to him to try and maybe beat. Yeah. Could you imagine if he had caught that one against the Vikings in week one? I understand it's just a week one. But just in terms of relationships and conversation, I kind of don't blame. Rodgers has got Adams leaves for Vegas. And he's got a bunch of kids that he's got to grow up. And I don't know if he really was in that mindset of his career. It's just that simple. I mean, guys age out of locker rooms sometimes.
Point. They could have signed Odell Beckham Jr. In what was that 2021 before the Rams signed him, right? And I mean, who knows? You say Odell tore his ACL in Super Bowl. Well, yeah, I mean, fine, but maybe maybe it's different if he comes to Green Bay, and then Rodgers loses Devonte, but he still has Odell, and they draft Watson and Romeo Doubs, and everything's fine. So, the Packers had plenty of opportunities to, add receivers, add people that would make Aaron Rodgers comfortable. The bottom line is that if you go back to April, 23rd, 2020, when they traded up to draft Jordan Love at number 26, that was the beginning of the end. And Rodgers said, a month or so later, the first time he talked after that was, well, I guess I no longer have the ability to control how my career ends in Green Bay. And, a little less than 3 years later, here we are.
Rob Demovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show. Last one for you, Rob. You've been around Rodgers and covered him. What advice would you give to the New York City media? Certainly knowing, the media world, obviously, and part of Rodgers' appearance on McAfee's show was calling out a lot of your colleagues. Schefter had a very viral tweet go out confirming that Rodgers told him to lose his number. And then the news of Rodgers saying he intended to play for the Jets was welcomed by back page headlines that were absolutely won by the Daily News. Just a total tweak in Rodgers' direction, a real shot in the arm is what they had as a headline. Johnson's Jets about to get, how about this? Gets Johnson's Jets, again, because Johnson is of Johnson & Johnson, about to get big boost after Rodgers reveals his intention to play for Gangrene. And again, this is not the sort of stuff he was subject to by the media in Wisconsin ever. So
there was no page 6 when I worked at the Green Bay Press Gazette. Well, there was a page 6.
It existed. There was a sixth. Hold on a second. There was a 6th page of the newspaper. So, so I give the floor to you on that subject matter.
Yeah, I will say this about Aaron Rodgers. He treats the local beat guys, the people who are there, the men and women who cover the team on a daily basis pretty well. He is. I always felt like if I was working on a story and I wanted to ask Rodgers for, his viewpoint, his input on something, he was going to give you a thoughtful answer. He wasn't going to just give you a canned answer. From that standpoint, if you cover him on a daily basis and you want to talk about things that he finds interesting, he's going to be helpful and he's going to be good to cover. I think he doesn't care for, quite frankly, the talking head shows that just want to give their opinions. I think what we do and what you guys do on your show and an NFL Network is for the most part reporting based information, but certainly there's plenty of shows on and writers that it's just all opinion, and I don't think he has any use for that stuff, which is fine. That's his prerogative. But I would say this: keep your Merriam-Webster handy because and read the definitions closely, because when we talk about words that he uses, he's using them for a reason. When I said go back to his contract adjusted, he didn't say that doesn't. Some people took that to mean pay cut. It's not what adjusted necessarily means. So keep your Merriam-Webster dictionary, because I'll never forget, Rich, walking out of that press conference, when he said, "Yeah, I've been immunized." I should have opened the dictionary and looked at what immunized meant, because it certainly didn't mean vaccinated. And again, I don't care whether it was his choice, his body, his choice. I don't care whether he did it or not. But obviously, what the backlash was from that statement. So, to the guys out there, just keep your dictionary handy.
Rob, thanks for the call. Greatly appreciate it, man. You be well.
It's always good to catch up.
Right back at you.
Tell Izzo good luck from all the people here.
I will do that. Thanks for the call, Rob. Look for more of my texts. Right. Thanks for the answers. That's Rob Demovsky of the worldwide leader in sports. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.